I'm Ryan Fenton here with Joanna Greshel, and we are with the great team at Brooks, Nia Akins, Josh Kerr, Nikhil, Jain, and here to talk the Hyperion Elite and the new line that's out in 2024. Guys, what's the excitement here in Austin this week, bringing this here to the conference?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time we're unveiling the Hyperion Elite collection as well as our Hyperion inline collection. As you can see, we've got this great color story that's inspired by the Paris Olympics. And that's going to go from the product on your feet all the way to the apparel. So a lovely head-to-toe story. And it's a culmination of a lot of working with Josh, Nia, the Beast, the Mavericks, and a lot of insights, bring that into with technologies, a cool story, and yeah, unveiling it for the first time in Austin at the running event.
I'd love to start by learning a little bit more about what, for both of you, your weekly shoe rotation looks like for your different types of runs.
Yeah, so for normal training runs, I'm usually in the glycerins, and then for workouts, if I'm on the road, I'm in the tempos, and then if I'm on the track, I am in these right here, the Hyperion MDs.
So I'm slightly different. I'll go still on the glycerins. I'll then go straight to the Hyperion Max 2s for the majority of my training. I think it's less aggressive than, say, the Hyperion Elite 4. So you can kind of put a lot of miles in there with them, and it's still light and you know, it's still fast enough to handle most of the stuff. But then I'll move on to like the Hyperion Elite 4s for if I was running kind of some faster tempo miles or something where we're really starting to put the foot down a little bit. I'll then jump in these, and then I'll be in the LDs for kind of any faster track work. If it's a horrible day out there and you want to have a bit more traction as well. But you know, especially come summertime, we're going to be in these a little bit more as well. So I'm more of an LD guy than an MD guy, but you know, so our shoe rotations are pretty different.
And the Max, that's this one. When do you put that on versus just the glycerin?
So I think I wouldn't session in a glycerin. I would always session in something in the Hyperion line. I think, you know, there's an element of, even like when you're talking about the colorway, just putting something faster on if it's a session. But what the Hyperion Max brings, I think, is a little bit more cushion, a little bit more like, you know, maybe we're running a bit slower, we're putting a bit, you know, slower miles in, but so we don't need to worry too much about can the shoe handle the speed. That's kind of where my go-to is there. So, you know, the fall's a great example for that. You know, jumping on the roads and getting something that's slightly less aggressive, but still can put some speed in there.
So like a long run or tempo kind of
Yeah,
shoe?
tempos. You know, in and out miles, minute reps, stuff like that, where you know the turnover's still there, but you can put miles and miles on those things, and you're still not going to feel it the next morning like you would back in the old days. So that's a really nice addition to the lineup.
And I mean, for both of you, the fall training looks like a little bit different from spring and summer. And Josh, you're preparing for a half marathon. You know, does that affect how often you're putting that shoe on because the training's slightly different?
Yeah, I think, you know, sadly we don't train for the half as much as I probably should while running the half, but I do like to do pretty hard long runs, and so, you know, when that gets to the 16, 17, 18 mile distance, I'll chuck the Hyperion Max on if I want to run a little bit quicker near the end of it. But I chuck the Hyperion Elite 4s on quite a lot now, especially when we're getting kind of down to the half marathon pace. You know, if it is, you know, I think we have a 10-mile tempo this Friday, and that's going to be pretty much half marathon pace, in and out miles. So chucking those on and getting used to them as well, just like understanding kind of what they bring to the table, and you know, if they can boost my fitness enough to try and run something quick.
You know, I'm curious that you're going through the rotation here that each of you have. With the technology of shoes changing pretty significantly in the last couple of years, this wave of super shoes, all this, how challenging is it for an athlete at your level to get that rotation and get it right? Is it pretty simple nowadays, and you can just say, you know, this is my go-to, or are you going through many iterations and different shoes to figure out what's right for you on those different sessions?
Yeah, I feel like because like the shoe team does a really good job of incorporating us. Like in the process of making every shoe, we kind of have an idea of like what we like and what we don't like. And also too, just like being a part of that process helps us to be more like knowledgeable about the product too, which I think really helps. I'm pretty simple. I just like the MD. The like durability of the shoe is great. So like I'll be training in spikes pretty early this year. Like I've already done a session in spikes, so which is probably the earliest I've ever done a session in spikes before. And yeah, just like speaks volumes to like how great the shoe is. So.
Yeah, I think we're just so lucky to be able to be like, hey, Nikhil, like we need a shoe that can do this. Like I think the Hyperion Max is a great example of that. It's like we need a shoe that can run fast enough where, you know, we don't feel like we're having to run slower reps or throw spikes on, but it needs to be soft enough where we can put a lot of miles into them. And, you know, I think the Hyperion Max is amazing for that. The Hyperion's amazing for that. You know, you like more of a lower profile shoe. I like to beef it up and get fancy with it and feel tall out there. But you know, I think that's what's really good in our position, where we can be the spokespeople for, you know, the people on the ground doing all this stuff and being like, hey, I think this is what we're missing in the line, and this is I don't think we're missing really anything anymore. And you know, that's, you know, it's a very lucky feeling to be able to do that. And yeah, it makes a big difference when it comes to variety of session and, you know, changing the shoes up even mid-session.
Talking about working with the team, Nikhil's team, you know, I think to most runners, like JoJo and myself, we'll never have the direct line to say, hey, I really need you to really work on this for me. We'll maybe go to a local running store, can we get fitted, those kind of things. But this is like a unique process that really elites and professionals are the only ones that have access to that. And so I'm curious to understand what that's like. Nikhil, for you, that feedback has got to be a gift to create this kind of product, but I'm sure it also comes with challenges.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an amazing part of the process. I will say that, you know, at Brooks, we kind of start with the runner. You know, obviously the racing product starts with the elite athlete, but our everyday running product starts with everyday runners. And so, you know, we stick to that same process. I'd say the difference is, you know, we start off with insights, and it's the same whether we're doing in-home interviews with, you know, runners, everyday runners globally, or we're actually in our athletes' homes or they're at HQ or on the road or virtually. But the difference is that we then work closely with them over months and, you know, years, getting a lot of kind of feedback, and that's that iterative process which really benefits us. The challenge is a good challenge because they do challenge us, and that's what we need. We've asked them to be brutal and super critical because with that, you know, we can really kind of fine-tune it down to the millimeter. And we know for us, if we're doing our job in fine-tuning to the millimeter, that gives them a chance to execute on race day and do their job. And so it's a beautiful process. I absolutely love working with the athletes. The team does as well. And it benefits both of us to engage and, you know, have those kind of, you know, like honest conversations, and that's how we get better.
What's that kind of feedback that you're looking for when you hand a spike off to these guys, or you know, an elite trainer, and they're going to hit the track? Like, what are the things that you're hoping to hear back from them?
Yeah, I mean, look, at Brooks, it's and you know, this is true for an elite runner, but it's true for everyday running as well. It's like the fit, the feel, the ride, the aesthetics, and not just the physical aspect, but what it translates to mentally for the athlete and the runner. And so, like, honestly, we want all that input in terms of how it's feeling, but we also need a lot of input in terms of what's happening between, you know, the 2 years. And, you know, like, I can speak to Josh and Nia about this, but a lot of our insights is like on race day, and you speak to an athlete in any sport, when they're like towing the line or they're executing, the last thing they want to do is either think about the product or be thinking about what they need to do. It's all about execution. And so if we can build our product to just let them kind of go into whether it's flow state or be in the zone, tune in and execute, then we've done our job.
What's that like for you guys? You know, you're going into a session, and today's a test day essentially for a new product. Does that throw the mental aspect off a little bit because you're having to get ready for this hard session, but also like, man, I hope these shoes work?
Yeah, I think the first round of the spikes, especially, I think maybe fall last year in Seattle. We did it in Seattle anyway, and they came with all these boxes, and it was raining, and we were like, and then they unveiled these versus our old spikes, and we were all looking at each other like, I really hope this works. Like, I really, really hope this works, because it's a big leap from where we were before, and I'm not saying that it like really needed it, but like this has been such a step up for us. I think anything in the footwear world in the past 4 or 5 years has just blown up, and I think, like Nikhil was saying, we weren't exactly playing catch up, but I think we had a lot of ways to get better. And yeah, for testing day, it's the footwear department have all these mental cameras and like all these different things that we're trying to do, and then we have all these questions. And to be honest, I don't know if it's the same for you. When I'm speaking, I'm like, there's no way that this is like feedback that they're going to be able to work with, because like I don't even know what I'm saying. Like I'm not a nerd when it comes to this stuff. Like, so I don't know all the words, like all the kind of buzzwords for them, and so yeah, it's like, oh, this is sticky, or this is like, I'm like, what am I saying? Like none of this makes any sense. But they're able to kind of decipher that and try and find what I'm actually trying to say, and then get that into the product. But yeah, it's really fun, because when we put these on, in Budapest, I'm looking at these spikes, I'm like, no one else around me's got the hand in their footwear like I do. And I think it's such an honor to be like, I'm wearing these spikes, and my opinions mattered while making them, and I think that's such a fun part of the process.
Yeah, how about for you?
It's cool because we I don't know, once you put on your spikes at the beginning of the year, you just kind of like get used to them. Like you don't really think about them, whether you like them or you don't, to be honest. So I feel like when we wear tested these in the fall, like you guys had us bring our own spikes. And our old spikes or whatever we wore in college, and we just kind of like did a few strides in all of the different spikes that we had, and these were by far, I think, the overall favorite of everybody. And I think I know I like them, but to hear like somebody that I don't know, my training partner was a little bit more like 8'15", and like she really liked these shoes, just kind of like spoke volumes to kind of like, I don't know, the versatility of the shoe itself, even though it is like specifically a mid-D shoe. So, because I'm more like 8'4", so yeah, it's exciting.
And Nia, you mentioned you usually wouldn't really be able to wear spikes during the fall season, but this year you have been able to with these. Why is that? Is the recovery different? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I just am prone to a few kind of like ankle injuries. Like I usually get them at the end of the season, like all the time in college. And this year, or last year, honestly, I started wearing these shoes a little earlier than normal. And it's usually from just like being in spikes, my like calves and stuff just get really beat up. And it's harder to recover off of that. But this year I put these on pretty early, and they're just a lot more supportive than any other spike that I've worn in the past. So I've been able to do longer workouts in these spikes, no problem, and like just start training in spikes earlier than normal. So this year, I've already started training in these, which is pretty exciting, to be honest. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, both of you are in events that have maybe 3 rounds at championships, and so is that a consideration too of, when you're even making the spike of like, okay, how will this shoe help athletes recover for that next round?
Yeah, I mean, again, you just nailed it in terms of like, I think you talked about super shoes, and I'd say super spikes, the recovery element that these new foams are bringing to the athletes, it's allowing them to, whether it's, like different number of rounds and having them in close proximity to each other, or even like training sessions, where you're going, you got a Tuesday session, then you're going to come back and have another hard session on Friday, and the foams are, they displace more, they respond better, they protect, and they're more comfortable, and all of that really is making a big difference for the athletes. And so, knowing that and hearing that coming from the athletes, and that they need the product to be able to deliver, has allowed us to really kind of maximize the amount of foam that we've used on these spikes. And one of the ways we've done it, which is super cool, is where we've integrated the foam with the plates by kind of punching through the plate and having the foam come through. And so we're maximizing the amount of foam, and it integrates and works extremely well with the carbon composite plates, both on the LD as well as the MD. And that's something that we're hoping to start bringing to other parts of our line, and that helps in recovery, but it doesn't take away from performance, whether it's training sessions or on race day. And then I'll let these guys speak to it, but hearing that they're in spikes more is also something that we were hoping that they would be able to get to, because the more they're in spikes, but they're comfortable in spikes, and they're not getting injured or worrying about getting injured, it's all cumulative. And so you start building this foundation, and you get stronger and stronger, and that helps go faster as well. So.
Yeah, I think for us, initially, it was even maybe a couple of years ago where the conversation was we want to be in spikes more, we want to be able to recover better off of these rounds and these sessions, and it almost went too far where it's like, actually, they still need to be super aggressive, and they still need to be light, and they still need to be everything. And so this is where it's got to, where it's the balance of like, you can go and hit, for me, I can go and run low 330s in a couple of rounds and then still be able to be, the legs are in a really good spot to go and try and run something in the 320s a couple of days later. And that's what it is. We're soft these days. Like back, when we were in college and before that, like we had these paper thin shoes, and that's hopefully why we're as resilient as we are. But now we have these like unbelievable like foams and things like that, and the spike team seem to be making foams up out of the wazoo. Like we have apps every year. It's like we have this new foam, and we're like, wow, like where are you guys getting this stuff from? But so that's what I think is amazing about these spikes. It's a real balance between like you will be able to come back every day and be able to hit it hard, but they're still ready to go. They're still light enough. They're still low enough profile where you're being aggressive with it, but you're able to come back every day and hit it. Yeah.
How many iterations did it take from the previous version of the spike to like finding that perfect balance?
A lot. I think when it comes to the plates, we go through at least 8 to 10 different material versions of the plates. The design and configuration is usually the same, but we're testing different materials because they have different bending stiffness and flex modulus, and we're looking for that sweet spot where it's not, like Josh was saying, over aggressive, because then you start feeling that in the calves. But so you need to have enough of that kind of aggressiveness and also that kind of comfort. And then when it comes to the upper, we go through even more like iterations, because we're really kind of fine tuning it to the millimeter in terms of how it fits, what the comfort is, and the fit plays such a big part, because you gotta have the athlete's foot planted on the platform to maximize what's happening in terms of the platform and the engaging with the track and the propulsion and exerting force and all of that stuff. So I'd say across, from when we get our first round prototype to when we finalize a spike, we've gone through at least 15 to 20 versions, whether it's the plate, the upper, and you also touched on something, which is part of our story through the insights and having spoken to the athletes. They want the product, especially the spikes, to be this extension of their feet. And so they don't want to be thinking about the spikes almost like they're racing without spikes. But at the same time, they want to be propelled and get that aggressive propulsion and amplification, this superhuman, version of themselves. And so that contradiction, that friction, we built into our story, which is supernatural speed. And that's come through not only with the spikes and the Hyperion Elite 4, but we extend that to some of the everyday responsive cushioning shoes as well.
Question for you, Nikhil, on the foam, because I think when you hear super shoe, super spike, the first thing you think of is this carbon plates and all that. But it sounds like through conversations here at the running event I've had, foam nowadays that, Josh, I think you said they're just coming out with foams all over the place. In the past, if you wanted cushion, you maybe you sacrificed some stiffness. Now, or vice versa, right? If you wanted a stiffer shoe, you'd sacrifice the cushion. It sounds like now the foams are able to really provide essentially all aspects that runners want in one. And what are you seeing with that, with the Hyperion Elites here?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, the supercritical fluid foaming process, what we use is nitrogen infusion, and that has really made a difference. It's been a huge unlock for the industry, for running, where you get, the cushion and the softness, you get the lightweight aspect, and you get the responsiveness and the resiliency, and you don't have to compromise on any one of those. Because you're right, Ryan, that was a compromise. You'd get 2 out of the 3 or just 1 out of those 3. And we brought that to DNA Flash V2. It's even better because it displaces more. It is a blend of EVA and TPEE, and so when we nitrogen infuse that, it displaces more, it's softer, it's lighter, and it's more resilient or responsive. And so, that, and then you apply geometry to that, and now you got like that secret sauce. And so that's where this collection is, and we're moving faster even as far as future foams as well.
Nice. Some final questions for you guys. Both finalists at the World Championships. Josh, obviously world champion. You guys talking about the mental aspect of this and stepping on the line and all the thoughts going through your mind, and the goal sounds like to not be thinking about your shoe. Can you guys walk through being at the start line in Budapest, and did you think about the shoe? Did you see it? Just what was that like, that whole experience and the confidence that you had on the line?
Yeah, I mean, the shoe is the only Brooks branded thing I can wear at Worlds. So, and I think it's the most important, and I'm the most confident in the shoe because I was a part of the process of getting it to where it is now. So I think putting on the shoe in the call room is just kind of like that moment where I can just kind of like ground myself, and it just feels like any other race because it's the same shoe, even though everything else is different, because that was my first experience at Worlds. So it's kind of like a sense of home for me. But once the race started, I didn't even think about it. I was like, I know it's working.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, like these spikes are part of our identity when it comes to running. Normally we're in like a lovely Brooks singlet, and so nothing is familiar other than our spikes, and some people sneak a good pair of Brooks socks on underneath them. But for me especially, like we had a lot of people from the spike team there, and I threw them on, and like when we were walking down and getting ready, these guys are obviously all going crazy and stuff, and it's so nice to like have that, like, but people like who made that spike care. They're there. They want to see that spike do well, and that's the thing is like when it got presented to us, these are World Championship spikes. That was always the thing. And I just thought to myself, these are World Champion spikes. Like, these are good enough to win this. These are good enough to be on the top of the podium, and that's what they deserve. And I think that's kind of what the awesome breakthrough this year was. It's like, we not only, have Brooks invested in the athletes that are good enough to be at the World Championships and make finals and win medals. It's like they're creating product to allow those athletes to get there. And I think, for that transition to be like, instead of us building a World Championship spike, we're now building a World Champion spike. It's just a really fun process to be a part of. And that's, I think, why these products live is at the top of the podium.
And Nikhil, for you and your team, you've had 15 to 20 rounds to get here, you said. You've had tough conversations throughout the year with the athletes, and when you see them line up in the finals, and these are just 2 of the athletes that have made world teams. Des just broke, Masters record in the shoe. What is the reaction for you and your team when you see the performances?
Pure ecstasy. It's just like absolutely incredible. There's a lot of work that the entire team puts in, and we're super proud of the work that we do, and we want to do our job to get the athlete to be in the best frame of mind and in the best position on race day, and then it's actually all them. Obviously they're the ones that do all the work and the hard work, and for them there's a huge team as well, and so it's a privilege to be part of that team and to work with them. And yeah, I just think each and every one of us are super proud of the work that we do, and so when it all comes together, oh man, it's a special feeling.
Well, thank you so much for being here, walking through these shoes with us, telling us about the experiences and everything to get here. We're excited for these to come out in 2024, and I got to run in these this morning. Jojo, you missed it, so you got them on now. You're ready to go.
I'm going to go this afternoon.
Well, thanks for being here, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.